This is my review of The Glass Castle by Jeannette Walls. It's the memoir of a woman who was born to parents who were really unconventional. She was born in the 60s, I believe 1960, and her parents basically could not be tied down. They were always moving, dodging bill collectors. Her father would get into trouble with either his employers or locals, whatever, and so they would do what he termed the skedaddle, and they would find a new place to live. I actually listened to the audiobook version of The Glass Castle, and I really loved it. At first I was unsure. It's read by the author herself, Jeannette Walls, and at first I was like, this lady is not good. Not good. But the more I listened to it, the more her style kind of grew on me, and I ended up really loving it. Like, her quirky accent, I really ended up loving the audiobook. It was great. Jeannette is doing pretty well for herself. She has a home, she has a good job, she's stable, and her mother is homeless, which immediately gets you wondering, why is Jeannette stable and her own mother is homeless? And so immediately you're engaged and invested in this book to find out why their family situation is the way that it is. Jeannette's childhood is told in a series of snapshots in a really almost impersonal tone. She recounts a lot of them almost like a bystander, which kind of makes sense because Jeannette grew up to become a journalist, so she is, I would assume, used to writing in that impersonal, relate the facts kind of tone. Her parents were what we in the 21st century would probably term negligent. One of the first memories she recounts is at 3 years old, she's cooking hot dogs over the stove by herself, and she catches fire from the stove. I can't imagine a 3-year-old cooking hot dogs alone. No supervision, just standing up there by the stove. When she goes to the hospital to have her burns treated, the nurses ask her if she does stuff like that very often, and the 3-year-old Jeannette tells them, "Oh yeah, I cook all the time. I'm a really great cook." And judging from the apparent negligence of Jeannette's parents, you would assume that they're white trash or uneducated, but they're actually both very intelligent people. They're both very intelligent people who just can't quite get on board with society's expectations. Her parents are really fascinating creatures. I think they're a great example of how difficult it is to classify real people as good or bad, because both her parents have these glimmering moments of being wonderful and caring and intelligent, good people, but they also have some really serious flaws, serious character flaws that affect not only them, but their children. One of the interesting aspects of The Glass Castle is that Jeannette and her siblings weren't really in a stable academic situation. They didn't really go to school until she was about 8 or 9, and then they went consistently, but already they were ahead of their peers, and it kind of makes me wonder how much of academic experience can be substituted with real life experience, because by the time they were in school, they had done so many things with their parents and read so many books that you have any experience with education and constructivism. It makes me wonder how much of that is valid and how much of their academic achievement was related to being able to construct their own knowledge because of all their experiences. It does make you wonder if we don't give kids enough credit because of what Jeannette and her siblings were able to do. I think anymore, childhood is so precious and fragile and delicate that kids don't really get a lot of experience at anything. We shelter them and box them up and keep them all bubble wrapped and safe, but does that really serve them? Obviously, we don't want to parent to the degree of Jeannette's parents, but still, do kids deserve more credit than we're giving them? There comes a point in the story where you know everything is gonna go to hell, and it keeps you reading because you're like, at some point, these people are gonna lose it. This is not going to end well. And so you have to keep reading to find out how exactly it doesn't end well. I really recommend this book. I loved it. I loved that you couldn't put the characters in a box of good or bad. I loved how intrigued I was with Jeannette's story, and it was told so well. It was one of those books that when I was finished, I wanted to tell everyone about it for the next few days and tell them that they had to read it. So if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. I loved it. I really loved it. And if you've seen the movie, please let me know in the comments. Was it worth it? Was it decent? I do love Woody Harrelson, so let me know, because I'm interested in the movie since I loved the book so much. Thanks.